Welcome to Valley Politics. I'm Terry Christensen, your host for our show on politics and public policy in San Jose and Silicon Valley. Today, we'll introduce you to San Jose's new city manager and learn how he got the job and what it entails. Then, San Jose City Council member Raul Peralez will give us an update on District 3, that's the downtown area, and we'll close our show with the second part of our interview with Mineta, tracing his career from mayor to Congress and ultimately to the White House bunker during the 9/11 attack. It's quite a story. All this next on Valley Politics. Welcome everyone, and welcome Norberto Duenas.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Norberto, before we get into detail about your job and some of the challenges you face, we ask some residents of San Jose what the city manager does. And we'd like to show you their answers before we hear from you. So could you roll the video, please?
I do not. Sorry.
No, I actually don't. I'm sorry.
City manager. He manages the city.
Oh. No. I have no idea. I'm not good at following politics, and I've never gone to any type of city meeting or anything like that.
I do not know what the city manager does in San Jose.
No, I don't know if he argues with the mayor or not, but hopefully he manages the city.
Okay, so tell us, what does the city manager do?
Well, the city manager is the chief administrative officer of the city organization. I think ever since I was appointed, a lot of people have been asking me, what do you do? And I think the best way to explain it is a lot of people can relate more to the organizational structures in the private sector. So if you think of the mayor and the council as being the board of directors of a company, and if you think of the mayor as being the chairperson of the board, the city manager would be the chief operating officer of a company. The difference, of course, that with the city of San Jose, rather than having just a retail division of a company or a research and development or a marketing unit, in our case, we provide a variety of services. So whether it's our airport, whether it's our streets, our libraries, our community centers, that's really the service that we provide. And at the end of the day, I am in charge of running that organization with about 5,700 employees and a total budget of about $3 billion.
Well, we'll come back to the question of who's in charge, but how do you get this job? What are the requirements?
That's a good question, Terry. It varies. And in a lot of cases, you have individuals that have been in local government their entire career, mostly in the public administration side. They've worked their way through the organization up to the position of a city manager. In other situations, you have individuals that have worked in a variety of organizations where they've started in smaller cities, moved on to different functions, and then move into the position of a city manager. In my case, I find my case to be very unique, because I started as a council assistant, which is very rare when you look at the career path of individuals that make it to the city manager's office.
Most big cities the size of San Jose, have what's called a strong mayor form of government. So the mayor is the chief executive. But San Jose is a hybrid system, and the power is really shared between you and the mayor and the council. How do you balance that off? What do you do if you don't agree with the mayor?
Usually we do rock, paper, and scissors to see what we agreed to. No, it's I've grown up in this hybrid type of organization. My goal is to provide the mayor and the council with the best possible information for them to make the policy decisions that they need to make day in and day out. And so it's a very respectful relationship. It's a very professional relationship. And sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, but most of the time it's really to achieve consensus through collaboration and making sure the needs of our community are being met.
But on those occasions when you see the mayor and the council straying from what you think is proper and correct policy, what do you do? How do you handle that?
I focus on the information. I focus on the data and the policy analysis that the staff has done. At the end of the day, we present our recommendation. We present the information backing up that recommendation, that policy decision. Clearly at council meetings, there'll be dialogue, there'll be questions. Sometimes we have to follow up and provide additional information on what they're requesting. But at the end of the day, we know that the policymakers make the ultimate decision, and we will respect and abide by that decision.
And as city manager, what's your tenure? How long do you get to keep this job?
You know, that's really up to my bosses.
And the bosses are the mayor and the city council. It's not just the mayor.
That's correct. It's the mayor and the city council. In order for me to have been appointed city manager, required 6 votes of the council. And any day they can decide to ask me to move on and do something else. But it's really up to them. And it's something that you know right away when you go into it, and you know, I feel very comfortable with it. It's I've grown up in this organization, and it's a great job.
Let's talk a little bit about past city managers. You know, we've got this budget and pension problem, and the political leaders, the elected officials, get a lot of blame for the budget problem. But I wonder what proportion of the problem or the responsibility for the problem really is shared by past city managers. You all are supposed to be the experts in public policy, right? So weren't city managers in the past at least partly responsible for the problems we've got today?
Yeah, you have to share clearly in the decision-making process. I mean, the city manager, especially in the past, before we had district elections and full-time council members, city managers wielded a lot of power and influence in organizations, not only in San Jose but throughout the country. So clearly there is a sharing of the decision making, and you know, it's easy to do the, like I said, the Monday morning quarterbacking, but at the end of the day, it is a shared decision-making process. And so, you know, I leave it up to the historians to decide where the blame or the responsibility should be.
Okay, well, we'll be watching.
Thank you.
It just seems to me that in the past, this is one of those cases where city managers needed to step up and say, council members, you're thinking wishfully. About what kind of money there will be available in the future. And I'm just not sure any of the past managers did that. But having said all that, we're kind of out of the woods on our budget problems, aren't we? This year you had a better budget situation, a little more money to work with. You were able to give a pay raise to city employees. I understand you've successfully negotiated a contract with almost all of the unions you're working with.
Correct.
So are we out of the woods in terms of budget? Are we going to see future deficits and crises?
I would say we're in a much better situation than we were 4 years ago, and certainly better than 8 years ago. Clearly, it's an indication that the economy is in much better shape, and certainly our fiscal coffers are in much better shape. I still feel that while we're in the black, so to speak, I think it's by a very small margin. And I do think that we still have a deficit in the services that our residents expect and we would like to deliver. So I think that times are better, but as you know, it only takes you know, an international crisis or something to really tip the balance and make situations you know, a little bit more difficult. But you know, for now, we're going to be enjoying the fact that we're in much better situation, and that we are able to give our employees some raises that they certainly deserve and have been waiting for. and as important that we're providing additional services to this community. For example, the one that really stands out is the additional days in the library with Saturday open. Everybody's very excited about that. We'd hope that that increase in services starts to spread out throughout all the departments and all our programs.
A big part of the problem, as you well know, I've heard you talk about it, is that San Jose's revenue base is not as strong as other adjacent cities in terms of sales tax or property tax.
Right.
How do you see us getting out of that hole?
Well, clearly we need a multiple strategy. A lot of it centers around, our economic development strategy and also our land use planning. Clearly our housing, we've been the bedroom community for this area for quite some time. And everybody that looks at land use knows that housing just does not give enough revenue to the city in terms of property taxes to be able to deliver the services that we need. So it's an economic development strategy, making sure that we have balanced growth, but at the same time trying to make sure that our area of retail and job growth continues to go in the right direction. So it is a shift. The council has embraced it, but it will take some time. We didn't get into this position overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight either.
And those shortfalls are part of why we've had the crisis with pensions, because we just haven't been able to afford what had previously been promised. So what do you think are the prospects for resolving the conflicts around pension reform?
I think the prospects are good.
Good.
I think feel very comfortable with the individuals on both sides of the table. Everyone's really rolling up her sleeves to work this issue out, the Measure B settlement that we call. And these discussions are obviously confidential, but I can tell you that if the public could just have a little bit of a peek on how we're working together, I think they'd be very proud of the work.
Well,
we're
maybe
doing.
by the time this is aired, we'll have good news.
I hope so.
Will you and your staff be recommending tax increases on the ballot next year?
Well, staff has recommended that before.
Yeah.
In the previous years. We will be looking once again at the information that will be coming out through polls and the community input in the process. We have a fiscal reform plan, and there's a piece of the fiscal reform plan that's missing, and that's the revenue component. So we're looking forward to making a decision on that soon.
Well, we'll look forward to hearing. These past few years have been bad for jobs in the public sector and for young people looking at careers in the public sector. Mm-hmm. The pension crisis, the budget crisis, rather than hiring, you've been shrinking the workforce at City Hall. Mm-hmm. What's your advice to young people thinking about a career in the public sector now?
It'll be one of the most rewarding careers that they'll ever have. It really is an opportunity to really make a difference in other people's lives. And I would say when times are tough, that's really when you really want to step up and make a difference. And so I would encourage young folks to look at the public sector, at public service. We need them.
And there will be jobs.
And there will be jobs.
There will be jobs.
There will be.
All right, we'll hold you to that. Thanks very much for talking with us today. Good luck with your big new job. We wish you all the best.
Thank you, Terry.
Thanks, Norberto.
Thank you.
And now let's move on to neighborhood news with San Jose City Council member Raul Peralez of District 3.
Hi, I'm Raul Peralez. I was recently elected to be your council member for the City of San Jose's District 3, which covers the downtown area as of January 1st, 2015. Shifting my role in public service from a police officer and educator to a council member in one of the busiest districts hasn't been exactly easy. In my first 6 months, my team and I have tackled issues that matter to our communities, from working to restore our police department and improve public safety, to focusing on the economic vitality and growth of downtown, to improving services for local immigrants and fighting for fair housing. Why have I put so much energy into these particular issues right away? Because these are the issues that can help unite our community, so that people who work here can afford to live here, and so that smart urban growth makes us attractive as a destination for businesses and residents alike. Visit us online for updates or to stay connected with what we are doing. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Nextdoor using the handle or hashtag D3SanJose, or check out our website at www.sanjoseca.gov/District 3. Thank you for your attention, and I'll see you downtown.
Now it's time for Where Are They Now? Today we present the second part of our exclusive interview with Norm Mineta. We'll hear about his time in Congress and then as Secretary of Commerce for President Bill Clinton and Secretary of Transportation for President George W. Bush, the only Democratic cabinet secretary in the Bush administration and the longest serving transportation secretary in the history of the department. Let's take a look. It seems to me one of the turning points in San Jose politics when you were in office was 1973 when Ted Tedesco was hired as city manager, and there seemed to be a real break between the old guard, San Jose, and the new guard represented by you, Janet Gray Hayes, and some other people on the city council. Tell us about that process, hiring the new city manager.
Well, the whole issue of development overpowered everything. If you had a square foot of land somewhere, build on it. And I remember Joe Ritter once told me, trees don't read newspapers.
Mm-hmm. Joe Ritter, the publisher of the Mercury News.
Of the San Jose Mercury
Right.
News. And so then on top of that, when we were pressing for the BART into Santa Clara County, and he said, well, all those people will leave San Jose to go to San Francisco. And I'd say, well, yeah, but the train runs both ways. So there was this change, and we brought in Tedesco from Boulder, Colorado. He was one of these who said there have to be metrics for doing things, and he was just terrific, not only as a personality, as a driver, but in terms of his conduct of how business gets done.
The story I heard is that Joe Ritter, the publisher of the Mercury News, called you out to the Mercury News, you the mayor,
Oh, absolutely.
to tell you not to hire
Yeah.
Ted Tedesco.
Right.
So that's a true story.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Because I've been writing about it
No.
for a while. So you ran for Congress in 1974.
And you know, Jim Ono, a friend of mine, called me in the third week of January 1974 at 5:45 in the morning on a Sunday. So I pick up the phone, hello. Hey, Norm, did you see the paper? I said, what are you talking about seeing the paper? It's 5:45 in the morning. No, I didn't see the paper. Charlie Goopser's not going to seek re-election. Well, that's nice. No, you've got to run. I said, Jim, I've already said in September of 73 I was going to seek re-election. October 74, Tom Bradley came up from LA, the mayor, and we did a big fundraiser. So my path is running for re-election. So I said, I think you ought to go back to sleep. I am. And I hung up on him. 7 o'clock that night, the doorbell rang. And I go to answer the door, and this fellow standing there. And I said, Gene, what are you doing here? He says, I don't know. Jim Ono told me to be here 7 o'clock. He had invited 20 people to the house at 7 that night. I didn't know about it. And the whole question was, can a Democrat be elected in that seat? So, you know, we had to look at the Wilson Riles, African-American public superintendent of schools, and how did he do in these precincts?
Yeah.
And the Rumsford fair housing law. There were a number of indicators we wanted to see how this looked. And in those days, no one had computers. We had to go down precinct 1478, take down the numbers, and then bring it back. And then we'd have to crunch the numbers. And yeah, there's a possibility. So in the early part of March, just before the deadline for filing, I then declared I was going to run for Congress, returned all the money I had raised for mayor, and suggested they could still be donating for the congressional campaign, and that started. And it was really it was still shaky until August of 74. And
well, people now don't remember this was a Republican area until that turning point.
Watergate. And President Nixon resigning, and all of a sudden you could see the polls starting to change.
And then you served happily in Congress for 20 years?
I did. You know, when we got elected in that November, there were 75 Democratic new members. I was honored to chair that new members caucus. And it was just people who had been elected, had never served in public office, now a member of Congress. And there were other members of the Congress who knew the kind of rules changes that had to occur. And we were an army of 75 votes within the Democratic caucus. So we had a great deal of sway, and it was just an exciting time.
What do you think your greatest accomplishment was as a member of Congress?
Well, I would have to say there are two. One was the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act, ISTEA, which became known as ICE-T. And that was the first rewrite of the National Defense Highway Act that President Eisenhower signed in 1956. So I rewrote the whole highway law and introduced a new concept. The first word was intermodal. And it had always been a highway bill, but we got intermodal in there to include transit. And the other part of that bill was to establish, as a process, metropolitan planning organizations like the MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission here in the Bay Area. And so that's now a pattern across the country. The second bill was H.R. 442, the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, where Congress apologized to the Japanese American population for what was termed as the gross unconstitutional act of the evacuation and internment. So,
those are big accomplishments. Why did you step down from Congress in 1990? You got reelected in 94, no problem, but you resigned in 95.
Well, that was the Gingrich Revolution. The Republicans took over. So it just changed totally. When I called our new chairman, who had been my ranking Republican, I said,
you were the chair of the Transportation and Public Works Committee.
And now I was the ranking Democrat on the committee. So I said, Bud, when are we going to get together to talk about the agenda? Oh, Norm, I should have talked to you about this before. But the speaker says, we're now in the majority, and we don't have to consult with you at all. And I said, Bud, the committee way of doing business was always a bipartisan rule of four. Chairman of the full committee, ranking Republican on the full committee, chairman of the subcommittee, ranking on the subcommittee. And the four would decide everything. He said, no, we're deciding everything on our own. So February, March, April, I'm twiddling my thumb and not getting anything done. And in June, Lockheed Martin came to me and said, we've been toying with this little transportation company, but we think we can make a go of it. We'd like to have you consider running the company. And I said, well, I can't. I don't want to leave. I just left. I won in November. If I leave in midterm, I would get pilloried. And I can't negotiate with you while I'm still in Congress. So in August, I called them and I said, hey, did you guys find someone to run that company? No. I said, well, come back and talk to me some more about it. So they did, and then in September I announced that I'm stepping down October 15th or October 12th. So I stepped down in October, then negotiated with Lockheed Martin and went to work for them.
And then just a few years later, you became Secretary of Commerce for President Clinton.
Yes.
And not too much after that, Secretary of Transportation for President Bush. That's almost unheard of, that somebody's worked for two presidents, especially two presidents of different parties. What was that like? Well,
because the nature of the two are so vastly different. The thing about President Bush is that he treated his job like a CEO. And when I talked to him, he said, I want to hire you because you're a subject matter expert. And because I was wanting to talk to him about budget, personnel, and policy. And he said, on budget, you're going to have to arm wrestle with everybody else at OMB. But you're a subject matter expert, so I'm going to lean into you for policy, personnel. But I don't want you hiring all Democrats at the Department of Transportation. And I said, no, I'll use the Presidential Personnel Office as our way of hiring people. And so I really enjoyed working under President Bush, as I did with President Clinton. But President Bush sort of said, this is your department to run. And so, 9/11 occurs right after that. And then we had Katrina, we had Hurricane Rita and Isabel. So we had just a whole bunch of things. And but I had a great team at the department, and we were able to respond to all of those.
You mentioned 9/11. You were in the bunker at the White House with Vice President Dick Cheney, right? Are you the one that said, bring the planes down?
Bring the planes down.
When
that plane hit at the Pentagon, I was talking to Monty Belger, the number 2 at Federal Aviation Administration. I said, Monty, we've had 3 commercial airplanes used as missiles today. And when one of that, anything happens, it's an accident. 2 of the same things happen, it's a trend. But when 3 of the same thing happen in a relatively short period of time, it's a plan or action. And we don't know what's going on. And in the military, they have something called a stand down. And we're going to have to do our own stand down. And to me, that means bringing all the planes down. So Monty had been a professional air traffic controller from the time he started, and now he's number 2 in the department. So he said, we'll bring down the planes per pilot discretion. And I said, screw pilot discretion, I want all the planes down. Because I didn't want a pilot in Albuquerque thinking, well, I'm going to just fly on to LA. I wanted all the planes down. So in 2 hours and 20 minutes, we had 4,638 planes in the air, all down safely and without incident.
It must have been terrifying just not knowing what was happening. And
Absolutely.
Having so much responsibility.
Oh, absolutely. Because here we had 3 major targets. And, you can't go to a shelf and pull out the book and say, let's see now, what am I supposed to do on a situation like this? So you're just doing everything off the seat of your pants.
It's an amazing experience.
Absolutely.
I want to bring you back to local politics now. So what would your advice be to young people thinking about getting into politics?
Well, I still encourage people to do that. But, public service can be anywhere from being a well-read citizen to running for office.
Yeah.
And the running for office maybe is, 1 or 2% of the population. So I always say, look, mayors, county officials, governors, even the president are always looking for good people. So I want you to pursue your professional goal, but save some time to say to the mayor, I'd like to serve on a board or a commission. And I think of Jim Bell, who I appointed as a youth commissioner.
Yeah, now our state
senator. City council, assembly, now a state senator, chair of the transportation committee for the state senate. So people can be in public service, not run for office, but still volunteer their time or become an appointee of the administration and still be in public service.
That's great advice. Thank you very much, Norm Mineta.
Well, thank you, Terry, for all that you've done.
I hope you noted that Norm Mineta's career began simply by caring about his community and becoming engaged. That's true for our other guests as well. Like them, you can make a difference in our community just by stepping forward and getting involved. Meanwhile, please visit our website at creatvsj.org or email your comment to us at valleypolitics@creatvsj.org. Or you can also follow us on Facebook, where you can post your comments and suggest guests or topics for us. And now that's all, folks. Thanks for watching Valley Politics today. Please check us out again next month.